rise, many are living in fear for being kicked out of their homes by corporate landlords who want to jack up the rent for their next tenants. No one should live with that fear. For decades, Liberals and Conservatives have allowed this to happen. Meanwhile, corporate landlords are making big money, and you're paying for it. I am proud of the NDP and our leader. We have been at the forefront fighting every day against the corporate greed that is making it almost impossible for families to afford a roof over their heads in the communities that they love. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to someone who has your back and works hard to lower your costs and to build a country where Canadians can get ahead for once. Please join me in welcoming the leader of Canada's NDP, Jagmeet Singh.
Hey, very much. Thanks so much, Lindsay. So lucky to have Lindsay on our team. Really nice to see you, Terrence, and the Ontario NDP is doing great work. And as Lindsay mentioned, we're here to talk about the cost of living. And before I go any further, I just want to acknowledge Acorn for their great work. Acorn is a group that's done incredible advocacy across the country, fighting for people who often don't have a voice. And so I want to acknowledge Acorn. And some of the residents that I got to meet today of Nelson, at 4035 Nelson. This is a property right behind me, owned by Amanda Book from Guelph. And what they went through and showed me was really some troubling things. Unfinished repairs, purposely it looked like almost like they'd sabotaged areas where they pulled out wires and left them just in that state. Holes had not been filled. And what we're worried about more and more, and what we're seeing across this country, are tenants like the ones at 435 Nelson are living in their homes, are getting by. They're worried that the cost of rent might go up, but they're getting by. And then they get a notice that they're going to get rent evicted, where the landlord kicks them out of their home, using the excuse of renovation, and then they jack up the rent and they can never move back in and they have nowhere to go. And with occupancy rates as low as they are, people have nowhere to go. This is a real fear that people feel. We were told, I remember hearing this again and again, you work hard, you'll be able to build a good life. But that is no longer the case. People are working harder than ever and falling further behind. And when it comes to rents, we know rents have gone up. Over the past 9 years with Justin Trudeau, he promised to bring down rent prices, but have they come down? No, they went up. It's more expensive than ever to pay rent. It's more expensive than ever to find a home. And so we've got a message today. I want to send a message to all municipalities. If a municipality receives federal money, we also want to guarantee that they are going to put in place laws that protect tenants. And one of those laws that we want to see is a bylaw at a municipal level, a law to protect tenants from being rent evicted. We want to ban rent evictions across this country. There should be no more rent evictions. And so if a municipality wants federal supports, and we need to step up and provide federal supports, those municipalities should also put in place guarantees that they're going to receive that federal money and then protect tenants. We want to see protections for tenants, and we don't want to see protections for rich corporate landlords that are ripping off their tenants, ripping off Canadians. We want to put an end to corporate greed. Here's the thing. What we're experiencing is not actually a fluke. When we're seeing tenants get rent evicted, when we're seeing rents go up, this is because the housing market, the system, has been rigged against working people. It's been rigged against people, and it's been rigged in favor of big corporations. Corporate landlords are making huge profits. Developers are making lots of money. Investors are making lots of money. But families are worried about keeping a roof over their head. That's not how things should be. I also want to be clear, while Justin Trudeau has failed you, has failed to address this problem, failed to fix this, has let corporate landlords rip you off, has let rent evictions continue, Pierre Poilievre would be even worse. Pierre Poilievre wants to throw fuel on the fire of corporate greed. His corporate buddies want him to get rid of all the rules and protections so that big corporations can rip you off even more. You think for a moment that under Pierre Poilievre, he's going to stand up to corporate landlords, that he's going to in any way protect tenants who are renting? He's not going to do that. He's going to do what Conservatives always do, sell off public land to the highest bidder, making his buddies lots of money and not having any homes that are affordable being built. That's what Pierre Poilievre is all about, helping out his corporate buddies, cutting the rules, slashing the protections for people, and letting big corporations rip you off. And that's why our message is clear. We want to change the rules so they work for you. We want to change the rules so they put people first. And one of those rules we want to do is to ban rent evictions once and for all. And so our message is clear. If you're a corporate landlord, watch out because we're coming for you. We're going to make sure that tenants get the protection they deserve. And municipalities, Hamilton has done it, taken a really bold step to ban renovictions. London is on its way. We want to encourage municipalities across this country, put in place laws that protect your tenants. Well, we're going to encourage and force you to do that. Thanks so much. I'm going to do that again in French, and then I look forward to your questions. Donc, je veux premièrement remercier l'organisme Acorn pour leur travail. Oui, Acorn, c'est un organisme qui travaille, qui fait un travail acharné à travers le pays. Ils sont vraiment la voix pour les gens qui n'ont pas une voix. Donc, je veux remercier leur travail. Et aussi, j'ai parlé avec les résidents de cet appartement derrière moi, 435 Nelson. Et ces gens ici ont partagé leur histoire, comment il y a des rénovations incomplètes, des choses qui ils ont besoin de réparer, ils ont besoin d'augmenter ou améliorer et ils ne l'ont pas fait. Et ils habitent dans cet appartement avec la peur qu'ils vont être rénovictés. Les rénovictions, c'est une peur, c'est une menace pour les gens à travers le Canada, où le propriétaire vend de l'appartement à quelqu'un qui jette dehors les locataires et puis fait des rénovations et puis augmente les loyers. Et c'est complètement inaccessible pour les gens. On a un message aujourd'hui. Justin Trudeau était un échec. Il n'a pas protégé les locataires. Avec Justin Trudeau, les loyers ont augmenté, ont doublé depuis des 9 années. Et ce que Pierre Poilievre veut faire, c'est pire encore. Il veut jeter l'huile sur le feu de cette exploitation des grandes entreprises et il veut réduire les pouvoirs des locataires, augmenter les pouvoirs des grandes entreprises et ça va faire mal aux gens. On a un message aujourd'hui. On veut bannir les rénovictions. Si une municipalité prend l'argent fédéral, on veut aussi des garanties qu'ils vont protéger les locataires dans leur ville. C'est exactement ce qu'on veut voir. On veut voir des protections. On veut changer les règles pour avantager monsieur, madame, tout le monde, pas les profits des grandes entreprises. Merci. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
We're going to start with questions on site. We'll do one question, one follow-up. We're going to start with CTV London.
Hi, Daryl Newcomb, CTV London. London is in the process of developing a licensing bylaw that would combat renovictions, but it's estimated to cost about over $500,000 a year to to hire inspectors, administrative fees, costs like that. And the licensing fee will not cover all of that cost. If you're suggesting that there should be a requirement on municipalities to have this in place to receive federal funding, who should pay for that? Municipalities, or should the feds ante up?
Oh, the feds should absolutely step up. So that can be tied to the federal money that's being sent to provinces. So included in that federal money should be if municipalities need help to enforce this, then the federal government should absolutely step up to do it. And if they're already transferring money anyways, funds to support the building of affordable homes, there's already a pocket of funding. There's already an envelope of funding that can go towards the enforcement and the implementation of this. But we want to be clear. We don't want to see tenants live in constant fear that they're going to get kicked out of their homes. We don't want to see any more scenarios where big corporate landlords come in and kick out their tenants, renovate the suites, and then put them back on the market for double what they were before. That has got to end. We've got to build more homes that people can afford, but we also have to keep the homes that are affordable. And if we don't keep what's affordable, then this is a losing battle. And one of the ways we do that is by protecting tenants. So again, we want to be clear. We want to support and encourage municipalities to bring in laws that protect their tenants. The federal government should be there to provide the supports to achieve that. But that is very achievable. There's funding that's already going towards building affordable homes. A portion of that could be used to ensure that there's enforcement on these bylaws. But let us be clear. Tenants need to be protected against the corporate greed of corporate landlords. You Democrats are the only ones that are calling that out. The Liberals, Justin Trudeau, has failed to do anything about this. And Pierre Poilievre will never touch this. He wants to let corporations rip you off even more. He wants no rules, no protections for consumers, all the power in the hands of big corporations. That is wrong.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. On a different matter, yesterday in Ottawa during a Status of Women Committee meeting that was supposed to be about the femicide of a 17-year-old girl here in London a couple weeks ago, NDP members supported a Liberal motion to change the topic, which basically derailed what was supposed to be 2 hours of discussion on this important issue. Do you support the vote by your members to support the Liberal motion?
First of all, there's a really serious problem of domestic violence in our country. It's on the rise, and it's exacerbated by the cost of living. As it's so hard to find a home, a lot of partners are staying in abusive relationships, violent relationships, because they got nowhere to go. They can't find an apartment. There's no shelters for them to go to. So this is a really big problem. I believe that Parliament should be a place where everyone should be able to come to Parliament, come to committees, and share their stories, particularly when they're painful stories and really difficult stories. I believe that Indigenous women and girls and all women that come to Parliament should be able to have their stories heard, their stories respected, and have the time to be able to share their experiences. That's my vision for what should happen in Parliament.
Okay, we're going to go to CBC London next.
Mr. Singh, the owners of this building, they did start renovating. They now say their plan is to build a much higher density apartment building on this property, like hundreds of units, which they say will benefit by adding housing stock. What do you say to that? I mean, that they're saying that this is, the owners are telling me that this isn't a renoviction, that what they plan to do is add housing stock here by building a much higher density property here in the core, which is in the London plan, is what they're supposed to be doing, adding more housing stock close to downtown.
Right now, without tenant protection, we know that tenants are at the whims of these corporate landlords. We don't know if they're going to achieve the goals of ensuring that they're actually affordable. There's no real clear vision around how the tenants are being protected. And that's our problem. That right now, there's no clear protections for tenants. And there's no guarantees that tenants will actually have a place. We cannot have a scenario that in the interest of building more homes, people that have a home lose their home and have nowhere to go. That's clearly unfair. So what we're calling for are protections for tenants. We want to see tenants protected. And in a time when people are worried that there's nowhere else for them to go, it makes this protection even more important. So our message is very clear. If you're a corporate landlord, we want to make sure that in municipalities across this country, there are protections to prevent them from being rent-evicted. If there's genuine landlords that are going to take care of their tenants, ensure that they have a home, that might be a different story. But we want to put in place protections so tenants are not rent-evicted, they're not left high and dry. And so far, there has been no real protection for tenants. And they constantly live in this fear that one day they're going to get kicked out of their home and have nowhere to go.
You have a follow-up?
Yeah, I do. One thing I'm hearing from landlords is that some of these older buildings where they have long-term tenants that are paying below market rent aren't cash flowing enough for them to put money back into the buildings for expensive items like roof repairs, elevator repairs, window repairs, that they're in a jam, that they can't get enough with rent protection. They can't get enough money out of these buildings to put the money back in to get them safe. You've toured through this building. It's almost at an unsafe, I don't think you disagree that it's almost at an unsafe level of dilapidation. So what do you say to landlords that are saying, hey, Jagmeet, I can't afford at the rent controlled rates to cash flow enough money to put money back into these buildings to make them safe or bring them up to like a basic standard?
This actually describes the problem we have with our housing market. The housing market has been designed for rich investors to get rich. That's the lens through which all decisions are made. How do I make the most return on my investment? How do I make as much profit as possible? That is not in line with people having an affordable home. And that's why we push for the Renters Protection Fund. In many cases, buildings should be owned by not-for-profit organizations whose goal is to keep the rent affordable. It's not actually beneficial for society if all of housing is only about making the most profit possible. Then you have the scenario that we're in right now where rents are unaffordable or people can't find a place to call home. That is because the rules have been written by Liberals and Conservatives, by Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre's parties. They've been the ones that have been in power. They've set up the rules to create a housing market, which is all about the bottom line. It's about who can make as much profit as possible. It's about making profit, and it's not about people finding a home. And the result of that is, if you look at how much it costs to buy a home and how much people are making, it's completely out of whack. But that is not a coincidence. That is by design. We got to change that design. The goal should be, let's make housing about people having a home. Let's make sure that we put in place rules to protect tenants, not the profits of big corporations. We want housing to be there for families. The goal for housing should be people have a roof over their head that's dignified and respectable. That's what we want. And that's what we have to work towards. If we don't, we're going to have a constant problem where people are losing their homes, nowhere else to live, unaffordable rents, unaffordable prices to buy. That is no way to live. And so we've got to change that. And that's what we're talking about today, changing the rules to put people as a priority, not the profits of big corporations.
Okay, we're going to go to the London Free Press next.
So I have a question. As you said, you mentioned Hamilton has already gone ahead and created a bylaw. London is on its way of creating one. I'm curious if there's a minimum standard that the NDP would enforce to say, like, not to say like any municipality can pass any bylaw that says it protects renters, but it doesn't really actually there. Are there any baselines that you would like to see in order to attach the funding from the federal government for housing into those bylaws? What would that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what Hamilton has set forward is a pretty decent standard for what tenant protection could look like, what protection for banning rent evictions could look like. So that would be a standard. There could be even additional protections in place, and we look to see other ideas as they come forward. But having at least the standard that Hamilton has put forward, I think, is a guideline. We look forward to seeing the way London will approach this problem. But really, let's be clear. If you live in a building and someone comes in with the guise of saying, I'm just trying to renovate this unit, and kicks you out and you have nowhere to go and you can't get back in, that's something we have to ban. We have to ban that practice, because what that is doing is it's resulting in the loss of hundreds of thousands of affordable homes. Under the Conservatives, when Pierre Poilievre was a minister in the Harper government, they oversaw the sell-off of 800,000 affordable homes in this way. They let 800,000 homes be sold off by big corporations, or bought by big corporations, and no longer affordable. Justin Trudeau's done the same thing. He's let hundreds of thousands of affordable homes be sold off to big corporations. If we continue to see this trend, we're never going to be able to build enough affordable homes for people. So we've got to keep what we have that's affordable. And a part of doing that is protecting tenants.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I understand as well that I guess what you're trying to achieve is flex the power of the federal government to get some action at the municipal level. But at the end of the day, it's the provinces who have the most power, I guess, when it comes to legislation and things like that. Does the NDP have a plan to, I guess, maybe not force, but get more action from the provincial government, which at the end of the day has the most power to, modify the laws in the province that protect renters?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. I mean, not only do we want to, I think we'd go as far as say we do want to force municipalities to have laws that protect their tenants if they're receiving federal money. Similarly, we want provinces to do the same thing. For too long, Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives, Justin Trudeau's Liberals, they have believed in a no strings attached. Give money to corporations, give money to provinces without any guarantees that they're actually going to achieve the goals. In some cases, you can expect provinces like BC, if they get federal money for healthcare, they're going to use it for healthcare. But in Ontario, we didn't see that. We saw Doug Ford use federal money to line the pockets of for-profit corporations, and that money didn't end up going to the care that it should have gone to. So that's why we want to see guarantees in all things, that if we're spending public
Hello, folks. We're looking into it. It's just a small technical problem. We will be back soon. Juste un petit problème technique. On va juste vérifier qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, puis on vous revient, ça sera pas long.
crazy. Working his magic on the ladies.
I was picking them earlier too. Oh my God.
Photography, doing all right, sir?
Yeah.
Great. How's everything? I think it's good. Thanks for coming out today. No worries.
Yep, and then there's me wearing track pants because I'm always cold.
Okay, I think we're back.
We're back, okay.
We'll give you those.
All right, we just had a little pleasantries with our folks here. Now we'll get right back into
Very
it.
Canadian, talking about the weather.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who likes
All
the
right,
feed?
everyone,
Who likes
we're
the clothes?
back. Alors, nous sommes de retour. Nous allons maintenant prendre des questions via Zoom. We will take questions on Zoom. En commençant avec Juliane Lapointe de Radio-Canada, c'est à vous.
Peut-être, Julien, vous êtes sur DIN?
Et est-ce que ça fonctionne là? OK. Je pense que vous m'entendez?
Oui, ça fonctionne. Oui.
OK, parfait. Je vais vous demander si c'est possible de répondre en anglais aussi à ma question, mais en français d'abord. Ce matin, le directeur parlementaire du budget a publié un rapport dans lequel on rapporte que la mesure sur le gain en capital apporterait 2 milliards de dollars de moins que ce que prévu le gouvernement Trudeau d'ici à 2029. Donc, 2 milliards de dollars de moins. Monsieur Singh, c'est une mesure que vous avez appuyée. Alors, qu'est-ce que vous en pensez du fait qu'on aurait moins de recettes avec cette mesure-là que prévu?
Donc, ça ne dit pas qu'on ne va pas augmenter le revenu. Ça veut dire que ce que les libéraux ont prévisé, c'est moins que ce qu'ils ont prévisé. Je ne suis pas surpris que les libéraux ont fait une erreur. Souvent, ils font des erreurs comme ça. Mais ce qui est clair, c'est le fait que on doit avoir un système où on n'a pas un avantage pour les gens qui vendent des actions et un système qui traite des gens qui gagnent un salaire différemment. Ça n'est pas juste. Donc, si une infirmière, une enseignante travaille et tout le salaire est accessible pour payer les impôts, mais quelqu'un qui joue dans le stock market, seulement la moitié de ce qu'elle gagne est accessible, ce n'est pas juste. Donc, j'ai toujours appuyé un système de fiscalité qui est plus juste. Je sais que les conservateurs n'appuient pas ça. Ils veulent avoir un système injuste où les plus riches paient moins de taxes que les gens qui travaillent fort. Je n'accepte pas ça. Et les libéraux ont mis en œuvre cette approche récemment, mais ils ont eu 9 ans. S'ils ont vraiment voulu faire ce changement, ils auraient pu le faire dans le passé. Donc, oui, c'est exactement quelque chose qu'on appuie. On va voir plus de fiscalité qui est plus juste.
D'accord. Puis en relance, pouvez-vous répondre en anglais aussi, par contre? Désolé pour cette réponse-là.
Yes. Oui, bien sûr. I'm not surprised that the Liberals made a mistake in terms of how much revenue could be gained by this change in the tax system, but it will increase revenue. And let us be very clear. We have always believed that it is unfair that a nurse or a plumber or someone working in public service, their entire salary is taxable. But if someone sells and buys stock, only half what they make is taxable. That's unfair. And I know the Conservatives want to support an unfair system. They want a system where the super rich don't pay their fair share. And the Liberals just woke up to this idea recently. They had 9 years. They could have done so, put in place more fairness, and they just chose to do it at the 11th hour. We believe in having a fair tax system where the super rich pay their fair share, where working class people are not disadvantaged. And so we'll continue to push for more measures to make our tax system more fair.
D'accord. Et sur un autre sujet, le gouvernement dit en ce moment aux Canadiens d'éviter les voyages au Liban, de ne pas compter sur le gouvernement aussi pour sortir du pays. Est-ce que vous pensez qu'on devrait déjà être en train d'organiser des vols d'évacuation? Est-ce que le gouvernement devrait en faire plus pour aider ceux qui se retrouvent dans ce pays-là? Et en anglais aussi, s'il vous plaît.
Oui. Je crois profondément que c'est la responsabilité du Canada de protéger les citoyens canadiens n'importe où ils sont à travers le monde. Donc, s'il y a des gens dans un pays où il y a une menace, c'est la responsabilité du Canada de les aider. Donc, je rejette l'approche du gouvernement libéral de dire non, on avance. Non, ce n'est pas la bonne approche. On doit protéger les Canadiens. And I'll do that again in English. I reject the approach of the Liberals. I believe fundamentally it is the responsibility of the Canadian government to protect Canadian citizens wherever they are. And for the Liberals to come out and say, no, we're not going to protect Canadian citizens in advance is the wrong approach. I think they are wrong for saying that. And if anything happens where there's a disaster or a serious threat to Canadians, wherever they are in the world, Canada should step up and provide those Canadians with a safe means of evacuating and escaping.
We will now go to Jillian Piper with Global. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Thanks for taking our questions today.
Of course.
So my first one for you is, do you agree with the Liberals' change that allows first-time home buyers to get a mortgage with a 30-year amortization on new builds?
It is a measure that I support, but it is not a measure on its own that's going to fix the housing crisis. And so let's be very clear that the Liberals have really just been tampering with this serious problem. And this is one suggestion that people have made that might help some folks, but it's not at all the full solution. What we need to do fundamentally to make it so that people can afford a home is to look at the housing market and the way it's been designed. It has been designed on purpose by Liberals and Conservatives to make rich investors a lot of money, to make rich developers a lot of money. But it doesn't work for everyday folks. It doesn't work for families. It doesn't work for young people. It doesn't work for people on disabilities. It doesn't work for seniors. It does not work for people. That is a problem. So we need to change that. And some of the solutions we've said is we've got to have a variety of housing. We've got to build more cooperative housing. It's a real option for people. Let's also be clear, cooperative housing, which has provided real affordable homes to thousands of Canadians, is something that Pierre Poilievre calls communist style, Soviet style housing. I mean, how disrespectful is that? And it shows you what he thinks about affordability. He's not in it to build affordable homes, but we are. We also need not-for-profit housing. We need subsidized housing. We need the federal government to directly build homes that are affordable, because we know that developers on their own, while a part of the solution, an important part, are not going to build homes that are affordable out of the goodness of their heart. There has to be a clear incentive and a clear, by design, program to build homes that people can actually afford to live in. And when I mean afford to live in, I mean people should be able to pay their rent, have a roof over their head, own a home, and still have money left over to pay their bills, to buy their groceries, to save up money for a rainy day, to maybe take their family on a little trip. I mean, that's what we expect of living the good life, that people should be able to live in that type of dignity and respect. And that's not going to happen by the market alone. It's going to happen by design if the federal government makes it a priority and builds a housing market that works for people. And that's what I'm talking about.
Thanks, Mr. Singh. You said that you support the measure on the 30-year amortization, but it doesn't help everyone. Do you think that this change should be extended to anyone who wants to buy a home?
Well, right now the approach is on first-time home buyers, and I think that makes sense to keep it at that point. But for the broad problem of affordability, it's not going to be solved by having longer and longer mortgages or longer and longer amortization. It's going to be solved by building homes that people can actually afford. And that's what we have to focus on. One of the solutions that we proposed is on federal land, there's land owned by the federal government, that we should be exclusively building homes that people can afford. Right now, the Liberals' approach is a small portion of federal land is being used for affordable homes. The rest of it is to build market homes that people can't afford. That is no way to solve this crisis. So we really need to take a serious approach towards building homes that people can afford, looking at every solution on the table. That's actually going to create more affordability rather than the Liberal approach of kind of tinkering with some solutions. The Conservative approach is to let rich developers and rich investors do whatever they want, which is not going to build affordable homes. Our approach is we've got to make this a priority and look at all the solutions to create homes that people can truly afford to live in.
We'll now go to Rafi with the CBC. Please go ahead.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Mr. Singh. I want to ask you about the government's anti-racism strategy. A couple of Liberal MPs have been going around starting a series of roundtables on anti-Palestinian racism, and I wonder if you think that should be included officially in the government's anti-racism strategy. And could you answer?
We've been drawing.
Sorry, I was just going to ask you to answer in English and French, please.
Gotcha. First off, I just want to acknowledge that there is a deep concern across the country of a rise in hate. We're seeing more hate-motivated attacks, and it is a serious problem. So to counter that, we want to see approaches taken to combat racism, to combat Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, all forms of hate. We want to make sure that we build a country where people are free to be who they are, and not living in fear that they're going to be a subject matter of hate or violence. So we want to see an approach that addresses all forms of hate to make a country where people are safe. In terms of anti-Palestinian racism, we know it is on the rise as well. It is a serious problem, just as anti-Semitism is. And so that should be a part of our strategy around building a safe country where people are free to be who they are. There should not be racism that's based on your country of origin, your ethnicity, who you are. And so that is an appropriate area to target as well. And I'll do that again in French as well. Donc, je suis inquiété par la hausse de la haine et la violence qui est motivée par la haine à travers le pays. C'est vraiment un problème, et c'est un problème qui est en montée, et un problème qui monte. Donc, ce qu'on doit faire, c'est d'avoir une approche pour créer un pays où tout le monde est sécuritaire. Et on n'a pas la haine basée sur l'identité de quelqu'un. On doit créer un pays sécuritaire pour tout le monde. Et en particulier, il y a une hausse aussi de racisme contre les Palestiniens, aussi l'antisémitisme. Donc, ce sont des éléments qu'on doit inclure aussi dans notre approche pour créer un pays plus sécuritaire.
Thanks for that. And just as a follow-up, again, if you could please answer in both languages, Jewish groups such as the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs really criticize the concept of APR, arguing there's no consensus among academics or experts, and that it only serves to silence political debate and preclude challenges of the Palestinians' political narrative. What's your response to that?
Well, criticizing government regimes is completely appropriate, and people should be able to do that. In a democracy, that is a normal and a healthy part of democracy. People should be able to criticize political decisions, political parties, and that is something that is a healthy part of democracy. Where it's unhealthy is when it targets someone for just who they are. So we see someone being targeted and being painted in the same color because they're Jewish. That is unfair. Obviously, that's anti-Semitism. Similarly, when someone is being attacked just because they're Palestinian and they're targeted with racism based on who they are, that's also unfair and wrong. So I think it's very easy to draw the line between what is hateful based on who you are, your identity, and what is legitimate critique of decisions and policies that different communities and groups and governments might take.
Et en français, s'il vous plaît?
Oh oui, en français. Donc, je veux clarifier quelque chose qui est vraiment important. On doit, dans une démocratie, avoir le droit de critiquer un gouvernement, une politique, les décisions ou des politiques des groupes. Ça, c'est quelque chose qui est important. Honnêtement, c'est fondamental pour une démocratie. Mais il y a une grande différence entre cette critique qui est juste et une attaque contre l'identité de quelqu'un, seulement basée sur leur identité. Ça, c'est quelque chose qui est clairement inacceptable. Donc, c'est exactement pourquoi on est contre l'antisémitisme, où on critique, où on attaque une communauté pour leur identité, au lieu de critiquer les politiques d'un gouvernement, même avec la communauté palestinienne. Le racisme basé sur leur identité, c'est évidemment inacceptable, mais une critique d'une politique, une critique d'une décision, ça, c'est clairement quelque chose d'acceptable.
We'll now go to Mickey with CP. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Hey, Mickey.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
So today, Labor leaders, they endorsed the NDP candidate in Elmwood, Transcona. That includes even the business manager for the Conservative candidate who endorsed your party's candidate for that by-election. I guess, how does that make you feel that the Conservative candidate's own union business manager is endorsing your party over his own employee?
Well, it shows you where working people stand. it is clear to working people and to unions who's been on their side. We are proudly a party founded by working people. We are proudly a party founded by unions. For us, it is never a debate. When the decision or a priority is between working people, workers, or big corporations, we always choose workers. That is who we are. And so the union leaders have shown that. They've shown we know whose side New Democrats will stand on. Leila Dance is our candidate in Elmwood Transcona. They know that Leila Dance will always stand on the side of working people, but they don't know that for the Conservatives. And so while the candidate is a member of a union, that very union that he's a member of said, no, we're going to endorse the New Democrat candidate, not the Conservative one, because we don't trust the Conservatives. And with good reason. Pierre Poilievre himself has made it his mission to attack working people, to attack unions. And unions, their job is to stand up for working people against the big bosses, the big corporations. So we know whose side Pierre Poilievre is on. He's on the side of the big bosses. He's not on the side of working people. And the union leadership has shown that. And so I'm honored. I'm humbled by that. I don't take it for granted. It is in literally our DNA. We will always stand on the side of working people. We will always stand on the side of people. That is who we are as a party. You are not going to get that with Pierre Poilievre. He's going to always be on the side of big corporations. And with Justin Trudeau, we've seen for 9 years, he has again and again chosen to side with big corporations over working people. That's the difference between us and these other parties.
Thanks. And then as a follow-up, the Conservative Party, they have released a couple of attack ads against you and your deal with the Liberals. But we're less than a year away from your agreement with the Liberals expiring. Are you considering pulling out of the deal before then, or are you committed to seeing it through to the very end?
Well, a decision to withdraw our support is always something that we have the right to do. It is always something that we consider when making a decision whether we want to withdraw our support or not. That's always on the table. But let us be clear about the Conservative attack ad. It is a lie. And they know it is a lie. The Conservatives themselves know that they're lying in their ad, because Canadians know why we're fighting Justin Trudeau. We're fighting Justin Trudeau and the Liberals to bring in dental care. Now, this is something they would never have done. And I think people know that. They would have never done this unless they were dragged, kicking and screaming, unless we forced them and fought them to make this happen. And now seniors are getting that care. And so to be very clear, why we forced Justin Trudeau to bring in dental care, we did that. I'm going to tell you one person that really summarizes why we did that. We did that because of Susan. And I met Susan in Ottawa, and she insisted I call her Sue, so I'll call you Sue. Sue, I met at a dentist's office in Ottawa, and she was sitting in the dentist chair. And she had just shared the story with the dentist and the denturist that she had just beat cancer. She was cancer-free. She's a pensioner on a fixed income, couldn't afford to get her teeth fixed, and had lost almost all of her teeth because of the radiotherapy and the chemotherapy. And she had a picture with her. She pulled it out and said, "This is a picture of my smile. I just want my smile back. That's all I want." And the dentist and the denturist looked her in the eyes and said, "Sue, we're going to get you your smile back." And she broke down in tears of joy, saying, "Wow, thank you. I had this dental card and I thought of it as my gold card, but I didn't know if it was actually going to work. I was afraid to try to use it because maybe my hope would be dashed and it wouldn't work. But knowing today that I'm going to get my smile back gives me so much dignity." That's why we did this. And let's also be clear. Pierre Poilievre wants to strip Sue of that dignity. He wants to take that dignity away from her. He wants to take that dignity away from kids who now for the first time are getting dental care as well. So we're sending a clear message to Pierre Poilievre. We know your lies. We know why you're trying to distract from your lies, because you actually want us to take away dental care from seniors. What kind of person wants to take away that dignity from a senior who's worked their whole life and can't afford to get their teeth fixed? What kind of person wants to take it away from kids when you yourself have had free dental care paid for by the public for most of your adult life? That's who Pierre Poilievre really is, and people need to see that.
Thank you very much. This concludes our press conference. Ceci conclut notre conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci. Thanks so much. Merci.
Thank you. Great job.
So much.